Okay, looks like we're live. Okay. Welcome to the Willie Bragg Show. I'm your host, Willie Bragg, and this morning we have a special guest here, Matthew Hoh, who is the Green Party candidate for U.S. Senate. And I'll let Matthew Hoh introduce himself and give a brief history of himself and where we're take it to where we're at this point in the campaign and everything aside from the campaign. All right.
Thanks, Willie. Happy to be joining you. I'm running for U.S. Senate as a Green Party candidate here in North Carolina. I'm a disabled Marine Corps combat veteran. I was at the State Department, been in the think tank, as well as a number of activist groups over the years, particularly working on anti-war and human rights type of work. I am a first-time political candidate, and I am the Green Party, I should say, is the only political party I've ever belonged to. Was never a member of the Democratic or Republican parties. I'm a Green Party member because I align with their values, with their philosophies, because I am a socialist. And it is, for me, look, if you don't believe in the two-party system, if you believe the two-party system is corrupt, undemocratic, and harmful, then you can't contribute to it. And you have to work to break it, basically, to disrupt it and break it so that we can rebuild it into something that actually represents the people. And, I see the lack of accountability for the wars overseas, the wars here at home, the war on drugs, or that crime against humanity at the border. I see how people I love are suffering because of the economic injustices. People are hurting. People are dying because of our for-profit healthcare system. I see the climate collapse that is already occurring, and I understand it is going to get much, much worse. It will become existential. And for those reasons, I'm running as a candidate for U.S. Senate, because with the exception of some of our areas where we overlap with the libertarians if I'm not on the ballot, if the Green Party is not on the ballot, there are millions of North Carolinians, working families, who are going to have no representation on that ballot in November if the Green Party is not there.
Well, I absolutely understand. I myself am no stranger to third-party politics. I have been involved myself almost for the past 30 years in various third parties, and I've been registered as a Green until the Green Party was thrown off the ballot after the 2020. I guess it was after the 2020 election. They threw the party off the ballot, and then they had to go through the whole process over again. And I believe they said COVID was the excuse. Am I correct?
Well, the Green Party, North Carolina Green Party, lost ballot access in 2020 because the presidential candidate failed to get 2% of the vote. So if you have ballot access in North Carolina as a political party, and your party does not get at least 2% of the vote from a presidential candidate or a gubernatorial candidate, then you lose your ballot access. So that's what happened in the Green Party in 2020.
And I know that the Green Party went through the signature process like other third parties go through, and you were able to make it on the ballot. And basically, you crossed your T's and you slashed your T's and dotted your I's and did everything you're supposed to do. And I went beyond what you're supposed to do, say, like getting like 22,000 ballot signatures. Mm-hmm. So the way I see it, that there should not have been any discrepancies, and there shouldn't have been a reason, from my standpoint, why the Green Party should have been thrown off the ballot the way that the State Board of Elections did when it came to my attention just recently.
Yeah, you and everybody else, Willie, with the exception of the Democratic Party, feel that way. I'm not joking. Like, you and everybody but the Democratic Party feel that way. We needed, so to get back onto the ballot, the North Carolina Green Party needed to collect 13,865 valid signatures. We collected 22,500 signatures, like 22,530 or something like that. Turned those in. Of those, 15,953 were verified. They were saying these are valid signatures. And that's for people who are unfamiliar with petitioning, that's entirely normal. If you look across the country, the average is that for every 4 signatures you turn in, only 3 count. That's just the way it works. People put down the wrong address. People forget that they are not registered, et cetera. So we had almost 16,000 verified signatures, which is almost 2,100 more than we needed. We turned those into the state. We met all the deadlines. We did everything procedurally correct. So that was June 1st. We had that deadline to turn the signatures into the state. There's a July 1st deadline for everything to be said and done, not just the state certifying us, but then after we have been, if we had been certified by the state, we were then required to hold a nominating convention, have our people go and register as Greens, and then have our candidates go and file for office. The State Board of Elections chose to hold their certification the day before July 1st. So even if they had certified us, they would have only given us one day to do all the rest of those things. So you can see there was bad faith in this from the start. Over the 30 days that they held our signatures, and it's important to say that there seems to be no previous other example of the state doing this. The Libertarians, who their chairman says in the 30 years he's been a part of 8 different petition drives, as well as Republican board members and other people who are not on board with the Democratic plan to keep us off the ballot, they are all saying, like, this is not standard. This is unprecedented. The State Board of Elections has never done this before in terms of investigating signatures that the counties had already verified. So we were made a special case. They held our signatures for 30 days. We cooperated with them fully during that time, the State Board of Elections. And at that certification hearing, the state said, well, there were 200 irregularities. And these irregularities were in signatures that were not verified. These were signatures that weren't in our 16,000 that was going towards the 13,865. So they were moot questions. And they never showed us any evidence. They never said this is wrongdoing or this is fraud, or, what they just basically said is that because there were these irregularities, there could be more. Because there could be more, we have to investigate further. But because tomorrow is July 1st, the deadline, we don't have time to investigate. So we are not going to certify. And they didn't certify us. And that was our there was no due process involved. Again, we were never shown the evidence. Then they went on to smear us, saying that we were under criminal investigation, which we were not. So the whole thing was really a calculated plan by the Democrats in charge of the State Board of Elections to keep us off the ballot.
It does sound mighty fishy, and I don't like to be a conspiracy theorist, but I kind of smell a conspiracy among the Democratic Party. With regard to, in 2016 and 2020, in my opinion, they shafted Bernie Sanders. So it's like, right. You go try to make a difference inside the Democratic Party. They'll tell you, if you want to go and try to make a difference, work inside the Democratic Party. Then when you try to work inside the Democratic Party, they go and undermine independent insurgent campaigns. So then you work outside of the Democratic Party, they're going to try to also find a way to undermine insurgent independent campaigns. And so they're basically taking a section of the population that leans left and forcing them to vote for one of the two major parties. And we're stuck. I've said this before. For the left in this country, it's sad that most of the time we're stuck between two political parties, where both political parties are actually to the right of Boris Johnson's Conservative Party in the UK.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly. And there's a lot of levels to this, and alongside what went on with the State Board of Elections, we also had the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee and the Elias Law Group showing up down here from Washington, D.C. And so alongside what the State Board of Elections was doing, the most prominent Democratic Party law firm, they're billed as the biggest and strongest and baddest Democratic Party law firm around. And it's named after, or I'm sorry to say, the principal of that is Mark Elias, who was John Kerry's general counsel, Hillary Clinton's general counsel, Kamala Harris's general counsel. If you're not familiar with him, just go and Google his name, read his Wikipedia page, see why he is arguably the most prominent Democratic attorney in the nation. Well, they were down here right after we turned our signatures in, and they began a operation to try and get people to remove their names from our petitions. And what they would do is they would call people, they would text them, and they would even show up at people's homes. And they would say they did it under the guise of confirming the integrity of the petitions, checking to see whether or not people really did sign the petitions or not. But that was just an excuse for them to then, as soon as people say, yes, I did sign the petition, for them to then say, Green Party helps the Republicans, abortion is hanging in the balance. They would say, things like there was fraud involved in this petition process, which is completely untrue. No evidence of that. So they would slander us. But I think most egregiously what they would say, Willie, is they would identify themselves as being with the Green Party. So sometimes if someone who was called would be told that it was a Democratic Party that was calling, other times the person calling would refuse to say who they were calling on the behalf of, but then they were also calling and saying, I'm with the Green Party. And, so deliberately misleading people, lying to them in order to get people to remove their names from the petitions. We even have reports that they were sometimes saying that they were at the State Board of Elections or at the Secretary of State's office to get people to remove names from the petitions. So deliberately lying to people, using political arguments to harass, bully, shame people, as well as tricking people in the sense of the way the text messages are written, or someone saying, so I'm from the Secretary of State's office and I'm a notary and you can remove your name this way, and making people fearful that they had done something wrong, and this was an organized operation. It yielded very little fruit for them. They only got, out of 16,000 signatures, they only got about 140 people to remove their names. So you have this, again, like I said, this alongside this brazen partisan effort by the State Board of Elections, because it's controlled by the Democrats, to keep us off the ballot. You have, moving alongside in parallel, this operation by the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee and the Elias Law Group to try and get people to remove their names, to gin up complaints, to try and challenge us to keep us off the ballot, and you see there's just this collusion between the two. And so we really are in a two-front battle here.
Yeah. And right now, either way, the way I'm looking at it is the way I look at it is that they're trying to force us into a box by taking away all the choices, and then if some people go and vote for what is perceived as a lesser evil, they're still going to sit there and blame the left for what it looks like is going to be a political turnover in November. And I used to be a 90% independent, 10% lesser evil voter, and I am turning more and more into 100% independent politics, because I've just seen it for myself. A country that refuses to address income inequality, refuses to address climate change, healthcare. That's both parties beholden to the military-industrial complex.
Right.
A government that tramples on our civil liberties, and I noticed you have the Julian Assange poster in the background. That's, a lot of people ignore the issue. Our freedom of the press, for example, is
All right. Let's see. Comes back. Okay, for anyone watching, Willie should be back in a moment. Looks like his internet connection dropped. So, yeah, just stay tuned and he'll be back. But, I guess I can continue on with what he was saying about, he left off there with our friend Julian. The amount of damage that's being done to this country is getting to a point where it's becoming irreversible. And the way it's spoken about, I just saw something today where North Carolina was listed as, oh, there it is.
Okay. I'm sorry, we had a little difficulty here. I'm having internet problems in this section of the state, so I apologize.
No problem.
Moment. I do apologize. Trying to keep things professional here. What were you saying? Again, can you repeat?
Oh, I was just, if people were watching, I was just following up on what you were saying. You were listing the various things that we're not talking about in this country. And I was beginning to say, it's more, I think it's worse than that, not just not talking about it, Willie, but the propaganda that is put forth as opposed to talking about the things you were mentioning. And I noticed today that CNBC stated that North Carolina is the best state to do business in. And my thought immediately was more than half of school kids in North Carolina qualify for free lunch. 1 in 4 North Carolinian adults are in collections for medical debt. Nationally, almost 2/3 of Americans are reporting that they are living paycheck to paycheck. So why North Carolina is a great state to do business in? Because people aren't paid their fair value for their labor. People are not paid justly. People are not paid wages that they can live upon. That's why business is so good in North Carolina for the banks and the corporations, but it sure isn't good enough, sure not, in any way for, the people of the state, especially working families.
Yes, absolutely. And North Carolina is like, I was unpleasantly surprised to find out North Carolina has the lowest rate of unionization in the entire country. 20 some years ago, I found this out, and
I think we're number 2 now. I don't think we're still 1. I think we're 2.
Okay, well,
right?
We're moving
exactly. The point is, and so why, when we have something like that, when again half our school kids get free or qualify for free school lunch, I mean that is something that how did it get to that point? Why is it like that? Why is it not getting any better? Well, because we have policies at the federal and state level that ensure all the money gets squeezed to the top. And that the banks and the corporations get wealthy, they get rich, they get bigger. Meanwhile, working families are forced to fight to get by. They're going through the month, checking their banking account every day, every other day to see where they're at. They're living lives of financial terror, basically, in order to ensure that the banks and the corporations continue to get bigger and wealthier.
Oh, absolutely. And when it comes to our politicians, we're like the last consideration. I mean, even with the CARES Act, I mean, they just thought that the $1,200 check 2 years ago and the $2,000 check for $600 here, $1,400 there, they thought that they were pampering us too much. Yeah. I mean, it was ridiculous. I mean, to go through this COVID and to not have health care. And Great Britain was bombed throughout World War II. They ended up having health care for all afterwards. I mean, contrast. I mean, it's not quite the same as being bombed to death, but the analogy is that they went through a crisis. We went through a crisis. And this is one hell of a crisis with COVID, and not even a public option or anything like that. I mean, which public option is still crumbs, but they wouldn't even consider that. They wouldn't even consider prescription drug reform or anything. And this just calls for something outside of the two-party system.
Right. The two-party system is just going to perpetuate the status quo. And it's a deadly status quo for tens of millions of people. Like the two-party system, the foundation of it is the money that holds it up. It's the big money donations from corporations, banks, the wealthy. That the idea that somehow the two-party system is going to fix itself, let alone fix root problems that are the very reason for the economic suffering of tens of millions, right? For the very reason for before the pandemic, Willie, we had tens of thousands of people dying every year because of the for-profit healthcare system. And we know now, National Academy of Sciences report from last month, 1 in 3 COVID deaths in the United States is attributable to for-profit healthcare. People can't get to the doctor because they can't pay, so then they die. And the idea that the two-party system is going to fix it itself, it's going to cut off its own financial bloodline in order for something more just. I mean, it's just absurd. So, of course, this idea that somehow it would reform from within is just absolute nonsense.
Yeah, and yeah, absolutely. And then we have, as I said earlier, we have the two political parties are beholden to defense contractors. I mean, all these, we made a promise after the demise of the Soviet Union to Russia. Don't have any, nice words necessarily to say toward Russia going into Ukraine, but Ukraine's kind of problematic too. I'm not on anybody's side of that conflict. There's problematic conflict there, but there was a promise.
Me as well, Willie. Yeah.
There was a promise not to join these Eastern European countries, not to join NATO. And what did they do? They joined NATO, and I always thought that the purpose was to basically enhance the profits of defense contractors. I mean, in my opinion, that's why I think they did that, and they feel threatened.
They do. I mean, this is the war in Ukraine, in my opinion, it's a very dirty war. It is a piece of territory being fought over by two competing powers, NATO and Russia. This has been going on for decades. If you want to claim that this begins in February 2022, you're a fool or a liar. It's again a dirty war that's based upon fossil fuel, but larger commerce issues, and the megalomania of those in Washington, D.C., in London, in Moscow. There is no good side in this other than the side of the people. And somehow you say that, and then you're criticized as being a tool of the Kremlin. And absolutely not. I completely condemn everything Russia's done. Their invasion is illegal. It's criminal. But at the same time, too, to say that there hasn't been this pushing match between the United States and Russia for better part of 2 decades now, and that to ignore the fact that there was fighting in Ukraine for 8 years prior to February 2022 that left 15,000 dead, to further ignore the coup in 2014 that ousted a democratic, although incredibly corrupt, government in Russia. I mean, this whole thing is just the madness of the way we talk about it. This, as if Russia was not going to do anything in response to U.S. actions. Is just it's shockingly. Well, again, people are either fools or they're lying for going along with those types of arguments. And I think you can be clearly against the Russians and clearly against the U.S. and understand them both as imperialist powers that are trying to suck the life out of Ukraine for their own benefit. And the Ukrainians are the ones who are paying this price. So it's incredibly tragic situation, and it cannot be divorced from any of the other American wars, whether they be wars where U.S. troops are actively involved or proxy wars. So to think that somehow we can put Ukraine in its own special box, it's not the same as all these other wars that Iraq, Afghanistan, Yemen, Syria, Libya, Somalia, etc. you know, when it's the same people who are running these wars, again, if you're saying that, you're again either a fool or a liar.
Yeah, absolutely. And think about it is that, I mean, and I would tell people, like in the Ukraine, I mean, there are actual neo-Nazis in the military and in cabinet positions in the government. And you will be surprised, you might not be surprised, how many people would just outright dismiss that. They would just outright dismiss the neo-Nazi elements and the fact that Stepan Bandera is kind of like a celebrated figure in the Ukraine. Right. And I'll tell people this, and they're like, "Oh, you're just a dupe." They'll tell me, "You're just a dupe of the Russians. You know, you're just basically just appeasing people like Putin." And no, absolutely, I got problems with Putin. Putin, you know, he attacks the LGBTQ community in Russia. There's things you can criticize Putin over too. It's an unfortunate situation, and I've always been against a lot of these wars. I mean, I was against the Iraq War, I was against the war in Afghanistan because of the people over there, but because of our troops over here being put in harm's way. I mean, and
well, that's because you're a person of principle, Willie, and so you see the need to stick with the facts of the matter. As they align with your principles. And so that's why you can condemn both the war in Iraq and the war in Ukraine. You know, I mean, that you can understand. But meanwhile, here what you have are people who are claiming to be defending the sovereignty of Ukraine, and they would have never, ever put an Iraqi flag on their front yard. You know, Iraqi flag yard sign like we see all over the place now. Although those are starting to disappear. So no, I mean, you're a person of principle, and that's why people despise you, because you do stick with your principles, and that should be saluted rather than denigrated when you are making an argument against war and speaking about Ukraine. You should be listened to as because you're coming from a place of honesty in your thought and your words. As opposed to simply going along with whatever you've been told to.
Thank you. I appreciate that, because as I said, and I've seen other people get smeared too. I mean, all over the place on this issue, and it's just in the last several years, if you go against the grain in society, that's the answer. They'll start calling you a Russian dupe, and it's been enhanced since this conflict started several months ago. So
it's funny on Twitter the other day, a quote of mine. I had a quote on Twitter the other day about Ukraine, and just same kind of thing said. There's no good sides, dirty wars, megalomania, both DC and Moscow. You know, and the first comment called me a Russian stooge. The second comment called me an American imperialist. Right. I mean, so you're always going to get that. You're going to get these people who are so obsessed with their version of truth that relies, again, nothing on principle, but just upon what is best for their group, right? For their brand, their identity, the team they're on. And I mean, we just have to roll with that and continue to keep ourselves in line with what is, again, our principles, our values, our philosophies, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. With my I guess now with regard getting back to the ballot status, is there a lawsuit that's going to be is there going to be a lawsuit to challenge this as far as trying to get back on the ballot?
I can't comment on litigation right now. When the time comes, I will. But unfortunately, I can't really make a statement about it with any good degree of detail. All I can say is that there are administrative, legal, and political options available to us. We're pursuing all of those. If anyone thinks we're not going to get our rightful spot on the ballot, they're wrong. We earned that spot. We will get that spot on the ballot. Too many people worked way too hard gave us everything for months at a time to get those signatures. Tens of thousands of people signed in support of us, as well as then to this idea that we are trying to represent people who otherwise are not going to be represented on the ballot, and their issues such as single payer, affordable housing, living wages, climate action, ending the war on drugs, issues that are of urgent importance will not be on the ballot if we're not on the ballot. And so we are going to do everything we can. We're going to fight this with every means possible in order to be there on that ballot in November.
Yeah, yes. And I'm wishing your campaign, and I'm wishing the Green Party in general, in North Carolina, the best of luck. I do have a question. Were there other Green Party candidates running too, or?
Yes, yeah, we have a candidate for state senate. I think it's state senate 16, Michael Trudeau, as well as Joshua Bradley is running for Raleigh City Council. Though city council races are, yeah, Josh is great. Yeah, city council races are nonpartisan though, so he's not on the ballot. He's not a Green candidate, but he is a member of the Green Party and the Socialist Party as well, and he is a terrific candidate for Raleigh City Council. He would be phenomenal for the people, the workers of Raleigh, to have a voice like his, because if you know anything about Raleigh city politics, the city council is just dominated by council members who take a ton of money from the real estate and development industry, including a lot of money from outside the state from real estate developers. And then, of course, probably the most egregious is that Mayor Baldwin is, it's so silly, right? Raleigh is a city that has more than a $1 billion budget, 500, 600,000 people, and the mayor is a part-time job, right? And the reason why is this allows for someone like the current mayor, her full-time job to be with a construction company, right? A development company. So, the amount of corruption that's involved, the transactional nature of politics is really well exposed when you look at Raleigh and its city council members, its mayor, and their relationship to real estate developers. And so Josh would be a phenomenal person to have on that Raleigh City Council, because that's not who he is, and he'd be standing up for the working families of Raleigh.
Yeah, yes, I agree. I've known Josh for it's been a few years since I've spoken to him, but I've known him for years, and but I do believe he will make a great asset to the city council. So and all that. Let's see what else I was going to. I was going to ask you a few other questions here. Yes. With regard to future campaigns, beyond this campaign for North Carolina, would there be? I'm assuming there will be a future slate of candidates in the future. Is there plans to? As far as trying to run candidates for office, in the future, like for U.S. House of Representatives and governor and things like that, how would one go about it? I guess that's what I'm trying to ask.
If people are interested, certainly contact the North Carolina Green Party. There is a variety of information about that on the North Carolina Green Party website. There's a candidate questionnaire. There's, a candidate guidebook. But first step is contact the North Carolina Green Party. And express your interest. It's just not candidates that we need. We need people to help run campaigns. We need campaign managers. We need treasurers. We need all the different roles of a campaign need to be filled. So we need people to be involved in that, and that's something to take very seriously. In my campaign, is trying to help people learn those skills. We're trying to build that. With the folks we have on our campaign right now, so that when the campaign is over, we have people who are who have that experience, who've done those kinds of things, right? That's a real issue for us as third parties or grassroots campaigns or independents, is having that experience, having those folks who have done this, and can go and run a campaign themselves, let alone the whole idea of getting candidates. We spend a lot of time talking about bringing in candidates, and I don't think enough time talking about building and growing the field of people we need to run things effectively. So certainly that's something that we discuss, and it's a priority for my campaign, is to try and do that. But yeah, if people are interested, please contact the North Carolina Green Party.
Well, one thing I have noticed regarding the Green Party is that it seems to have the holding power that other third parties seem fairly lacking over the years, and that's something that's accorded me in a positive way.
Yeah, you're breaking up, but you're asking
Hello?
me whether or not the fact that the Green Party had some holding power while the other third parties don't. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, well, yeah. What I'm saying is, it seems like the Green Party in the past 30 years, I've seen third parties come and go around. I'm 53 years old, and I've seen third parties come and go, like the New Party. I've seen the Labor Party come and go.
Mhm.
I've seen, there was a party in the 1980s that was somewhat of a predecessor to the Green Party, but not quite, called the Citizens Party. Groups like that, and they have kind of gone, entered the scene. People knew about them, and then they kind of faded away. But it seemed like the Green Party kind of just stuck around and have been able to access in most states in a way that other third parties of the left weren't able to.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's something we should examine and understand why that is. Some of it, I think, is simply, Ralph Nader, the last 20 years, 25 years or so, is recognized as the Green candidate. And so that gives the Green Party some form of identity. I know people feel different ways about Ralph, but I think in terms of giving the Green Party like a degree of legitimacy, having a candidate with the prominence of Ralph is something that has helped sustain the Green Party over the last 30 years. And then the dedication to it by thousands of people across the country, that is probably the prime reason why people have remained dedicated to it, because I think it's that combination of the concern for human rights, which includes housing, healthcare, education, jobs, so economic rights, that can be so easily tied into and integrated with the concern for the environment. Most people think of the Green Party and they think of environment. They're not aware that we are a party that has a whole an incredibly large platform that is all tied together. And that's why we use the term eco-socialist, because it's the idea of an ecology, a wholeness, that things are interact, they're integrated, they're intersectional, they tie together. And so there's been thousands of people who have really understood the urgency of what we're facing, and they recognize that the answer lies in thinking in policies and in philosophies as the Green Party espouses. So people have hung in there, right, and continued to keep the Green Party viable. And Green Party's won more than 1,000 races in the last 20 some odd years. We currently have 133 people in elected office, and the full weight of the two-party system is often against the Green Party. So it's not even just a question of thriving, but it's a question of surviving often. And we have to get to the point where we're able to thrive, to build, to grow, and to become a party that really represents the left half of the political spectrum that has been abandoned by the Democrats and that is taken for granted by the Democrats. The Democrats view the left as something they are entitled to. And all they do is pay it lip service and tell the people on the left, if you don't enjoy the crumbs we're giving you, then you're going to be out of luck when the Republicans are in power. So be happy with your crumbs. And as a party, we can represent something that's going to give people something much more than crumbs, but, fair, just living wages, for example.
Yeah, and that's the appeal for me, because for me, as a socialist and somebody who cares about the environment and somebody who's opposed to these interventionist wars. As a civil libertarian, the Green Party kind of has all that appeal for me, and so I've always, I've been, as I said, previously my political party was the Socialist Party, but and I'm still am a socialist. I'm just kind of independent these days. But the Green Party has the broad appeal that it will take that I think could be the viable third party that's outside of the Democratic Party for people to go to. I mean, in other words, I think that the Green Party could potentially be that party, and the fact that it has that, that's kind of stood the test of time better than some of the other third parties of the left in the past, sort of indicates that. So, and I've been impressed. So, and I voted for Ralph Nader several cycles over the years. I'm no stranger to my votes for Ralph and for Jill Stein and for Howie Hawkins as well.
Yeah. Yeah, no, same here. Same as well. I didn't vote for Ralph back in the early 2000s. But certainly voted for Jill and for Howie. And like you, I gave the two-party system more than enough time, and, this is, again, the reason why we're running, or one of the reasons. I mean, we see that, again, this two-party system is corrupt, it's undemocratic, it's hurting us. And so we have to break it apart. We have to disrupt it, and one of the ways we do that is by running third-party candidates, by having grassroots campaigns, by having independents on the ballot, because the first past the post system that we have right now is not meant for anything more than two parties. We continue to run candidates in those races, have a multi-party race in a two-party race. It's going to, like better terms, messes it all up, right? And at some point, that pressure, that disruption will break it. And then it will have to be fixed. And in order to fix it, we'll have to go to a ranked choice voting system, eventually to proportional representation, as well as all the other issues that we all know we need to do in this country to get some degree of representation to the people, such as getting money out of politics, abolishing the Electoral College, term limits are a possibility, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, and I'm actually been always in favor of term limits because I always thought that term limits would actually make it easier, or could potentially make it easier for a third party to kind of slip into the system, whether it's the Green Party or even the Libertarians. I mean, any political party outside of the two-party system will have kind of an opportunity to break through. In 1996, the new party tried bringing to the Supreme Court the issue of fusion, which would allow it. I think fusion, which allows third parties to cross-endorse each other, or third parties to endorse an individual major party candidate, and to combine the vote totals. And Chief Justice Rehnquist told the new party that if the Supreme Court allowed this, that it would alter the two-party system, it would end the two-party system. And I'm thinking, I'm like, he's saying this like this is a terrible thing.
Right.
But and I used to favor that approach, but that's a sneaky way of enabling one of the major parties. I mean, back in this time when the American Labor Party of New York State did that to help Roosevelt in New York, I mean, there was a case for it, but the days of Roosevelt and the Democrats, the Democratic Party of Roosevelt's gone, and Bill Clinton basically turned the Democratic Party into basically the party of Reagan that's socially liberal on a few issues.
Correct. And I feel the same on fusion politics as well, Willie. I mean, it sounds good, and I think if we had a system maybe that wasn't completely beholden to money and corporate interests, maybe it would work. But I think it is too easy for one of the major corporate parties to influence and overtake a minor party through all its resources, its money, the pressure it could bring to bear, the degree of the way the relationship could be to manipulate. So exactly. And I see that because, they have that up in New York to a degree. I don't think I can't with the Working Families Party, where you see them jointly endorsing things with the Democratic Party candidates that you're just like, this does not make sense in the sense of like what the Working Family Party actually presents itself as being in support of. And so that's why I would imagine would happen here. The Democratic Party would just co-opt, just as a Republican Party would do for anyone on their side, so to speak. We've got this inane horizontal line, right, that purports to explain the entirety of our political system or the spectrum, ecosphere, whatever, and so we go along with this inane simplification of it. But yeah, I know the idea of fusion politics, it sounds like it could be promising, but I don't think it works. Just because of the realities of our political system and the dominance, especially of money.
Yeah. When I look at New York State and see the Working Families Party, at first it sounds good, but then when you look at the election and you get to vote for Chuck Schumer in the Working Families Party, even worse, Hillary Clinton for senator or president. I mean, then Working Families Party is not so appealing after all. I mean,
exactly. If anyone thinks Schumer or Clinton are standing up for working families, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah. So I mean, so so I'm just, I would say that if they did fusion nationally, I would say maybe progressive third parties could make an agreement to work with each other. That could work, but that would be the only way, that would be the only feasible way. But that maybe independent third parties could work together and make an agreement to work together and not to work with the major parties where the potential corruption could take place.
That's exactly right. I mean, I certainly have no problem with independents or third parties or other grassroots campaigns, whatever you want to describe them as cross-endorsing one another. So certainly I've received endorsement from the social alternative here in North Carolina, and I'm grateful for that. And our values align, and they're at this point not running candidates. So it makes sense for us to have that type of relationship. And going forward, I think, as we build a movement on the left or continue to build a movement on the left, because people have been doing this for a long time, we have to look at having a mass unified party as opposed to having, many separate parties. But certainly smaller parties helping each other, I think that's a different story than what we're talking about in sense of aligning somehow with the major parties.
Yeah, because the major parties have kind of, as I said, and that's another thing right there. And I even talk to conservatives who are not satisfied with their candidates, and because if there's one thing that I think people can agree with across the political spectrum, that nobody is satisfied with the status quo. And even a lot of Republicans are kind of not satisfied with their Republican lot for their own specific reasons. And I'll tell them, I'm like, look, if you don't like your Republican congressman, if you can bring yourself to vote Libertarian, why don't you go ahead and vote for the Libertarian? What's it gonna hurt? And I'll say that to the Democrats, as a Democratic voter. I mean, if there's a Green candidate, what's it going to hurt to vote for a Green candidate? I mean, what's it going to hurt? I mean, if you're not satisfied with, if the Democrats are letting you down, go ahead, stop complaining about the two-party system. But they will complain about their candidates and complain about business as usual. And then somehow they'll be like, well, it's a waste of time. And then they go back and repeat the insanity of voting for the same humdrum candidates, and it's really frustrating. And I actually think that the two-party system even perpetuates the culture war, because you have competing special interests and ideological camps in one party that may hate each other, but they hate the other dominant party even more. And so they're united by their hatred and fear of the other side. And that's why we have the situation where politically, everybody's just shouting at each other, and everything is a red state, blue state argument, and red state, blue state divide.
Yes, and it purposefully, because that plays best into the identity politics of the two-party system, the red versus blue. Not talking about identity politics in the sense of people standing up for their communities, talking about this grossly simplified good versus evil, red versus blue, MSNBC versus Fox political process we have here in this country. I heard Andrew Yang the other day talking about this, that I guess between 40 and 50% of Democrats view Republicans as evil, and a likewise number of Republicans view Democrats as evil. I mean, this idea that it's just about being afraid of the other, the proverbial other, that it becomes issues don't matter. What's best for you and your family and your neighbors do not matter. What matters is your, there's some primordial fear about another group. And that's what motivates many, many people to vote, and makes them continue to be locked in to a two-party system that they overwhelmingly themselves refer to as a lesser of evil two systems. Lesser of two evil systems. So this is a real problem. And because what you see, though, is while you'll have disagreement between, and it's more in disagreement, but between the Republicans, Democrats on social issues or cultural issues, abortion, marriage equality, trans rights, things like that, which are incredibly important. I'm not saying that, but there is mass agreement between the Democrats and Republicans on the military-industrial complex, on Wall Street, on support for corporations, whether it's corporate subsidies or rewriting the tax code or regulations or whatever it may be, on big agriculture, on healthcare. I mean, and these are the life and death issues that kill people. You look at, say, the bipartisan border policy we had. We had those 53 people who died so horribly in that trailer down in Texas. All those people wanted were a better life, and they died in a trailer, suffocated death in unbelievable heat because of a bipartisan border policy that we have. That's when we talk about the deadly status quo, that's what we are talking about. So it is. There are issues that the Democrats and Republicans differ on, but I would make the argument then that they are more in agreement on issues that are matters of life and death for people, for working families, than they are in disagreement. And certainly when you compare, say, the Green Party to the Democratic Party, you see a huge gulf between the two. We do overlap on some issues, not especially, though, because as you see, on abortion, the Democrats supported Henry Cuellar in Texas. You've got President Biden. Maybe he changed his mind the last day or so, but he's going to nominate a pro-life judge to the court. I mean, Hillary Clinton ran with a pro-life running mate in here in North Carolina, out in District 1, who's a Don Davis, who's representing the Democrats for the U.S. House in District 1. He's in the state Senate. He used to vote against Planned Parenthood. In District 9 here, U.S. House District 9, Ben Clark, who's running for the Democrats, 2 months ago, just voted for the Don't Say Gay bill. I mean, so, the Democrats are not running on principles that fully support women's right to an abortion or the protection of our LGBTQIA family members and friends. I mean, so they can say that, but the reality is they often don't.
Yeah, absolutely. And think about it. Point is that with regard to the two-party system, the way that they kind of just turn, the way that they turn against each other, everybody against each other, is that populism is on the rise right now. I mean, there's been a demand for positive change, and they use these wedge issues. And I mean, not that I'm going to say anything wonderful about Donald Trump, but 2016 Donald Trump, he kind of brushed the culture issue, the culture war stuff, that's the business as usual rhetoric for the Republican Party aside. But then in 2020, he ended up sounding like your typical Republican Party candidate, but like 100 times louder. So I mean, so
that's because Willie, he didn't believe it. He didn't believe
Yeah,
it. I remember in it was 2015. It was it 2015 or 2016 here in North Carolina when we had HB2, the bathroom bill.
right.
2015 or 2016, I can't remember which. But Trump was asked at that point about it, and I guess it was he was asked, where should a trans person be allowed to go to the bathroom, and Trump said wherever they want to. And then by the time this was during the primary, by the time he had gotten into the general election, he, of course, had been told you can't answer it that way, But, but that's what we see. We see all the time politicians who don't believe anything they're saying. And they're doing what is best based upon, polling data, or in reality, what they're doing is because of donations. Where are we going to get the most money from? Okay, so if I say this, I won't get as much money. If I say this, then I'll do that. And that's what happened. You saw with Trump. Not trying to put any praise on that guy. He should be in jail. He should have been in jail before he became president. You see that, though, where they will say things. And it's so amazing, though, because you have someone like him who is I know you call yourself a dirtbag, but you're not. Trump is a real dirtbag. He's a con man. He's a crook. He should be in jail. And what's so amazing is the support he has from, like, say, evangelical Christians. Who, and the theme we keep coming back to here, Willie, is just this abandonment of principle for political necessity, right? Or abandonment of principle to go along with whatever your political party is saying, whatever is best for their own self-interest. So we see that continually throughout American politics.
Now, regarding some of those evangelical Christians, I mean, one, the stuff that they overlooked Donald Trump over, they hated Bill Clinton in the 1990s, and he's basically a Republican Bill Clinton. And then two, abortion. I tell people that I think that the Democrats are actually really glad Roe versus Wade was overturned, because now they don't have to hear, they can fundraise. They don't have to hear those pesky progressives talk about the unions and Medicare for all, or even that public option. And some of the Republicans and the pro-life activists and evangelicals, they know that they don't have a wedge issue to worry about anymore. So I actually think that maybe on the right, they're probably more upset that Roe versus Wade got overturned.
Yeah, and I'm
just an observation.
Yeah, and I have to get going in a moment or two. With Roe or with the Dobbs decision, what we saw the day of the Dobbs decision and the day after the Dobbs decision were the two best days for fundraising ever for the Democratic Party, or at least for the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee. They set record fundraising on the day of Dobbs and the day after Dobbs, number 1 and 2 days, right? So it's good for them. People have been saying this for a long time, that the Democrats have just cynically been using abortion as a fundraising tool and as a way to get people out to the voting booth. And I think that's right. That if, rather than protect abortion like they could have done for 50 years, they chose to do almost nothing to protect abortion. And they played around with it. And you have all types of statements from Democratic leaders over the last 10, 20 years where abortion really isn't that big a deal, or we have to, so there has never been a real commitment to it from the Democratic Party. Have there been politicians within the Democratic Party who've been committed? Sure, of course. But within the party itself, absolutely not. And so the ability now to have abortion as a fight, even though they're never going to do anything about it. Well, we're supposed to believe that this time we're really going to do something about it. I know we've been saying it for 50 years, but this time we're really going to protect abortion. They're not going to. And danger for me, Willie, is that the way the decision Dobbs is based upon is this whole kind of states' rights type of thing, right? Where the states get to decide all this. And we have such a red-blue divide that the Democrats, people in New York, people in California, Massachusetts, wherever, they're not going to lose their abortion access. They're not going to lose their marriage equality. So there's going to be there could be a complacency that exists among large segments of the Democratic Party, especially their donor class within the Democratic who resides in these areas where, well, it's too bad for the people in Texas and Alabama and possibly North Carolina, but we're safe here in California. We're safe here in Massachusetts. We're safe here in New York. It's not going to happen here. So it's, I mean, it's just the cynicism, and it all keeps coming back to their fundraising and their donations and the support of the corporations, the banks, and the wealthy. And that's why you see we can have these January 6th hearings. And I wish we didn't have these hearings. I wish we just had criminal investigations and put people in jail. But,
Absolutely.
Right, we have this theater instead. But, January 6th hearings are allowed to go on because these hearings do not threaten the profits of Monsanto. They don't threaten the profits of Raytheon. They don't threaten the profits of Goldman Sachs. And that's why we'll never see any hearings like January 6th for the wars, right? For the catastrophic COVID response. I mean, for any of the recessions or housing crises or anything that were, brought to us by the greed of Wall Street. We'll never see any hearings on any of those. So we'll only see things that are never going to affect the profits of the banks and the corporations. But yeah, I have to get going. I have to go drop off a form with the State Board of Elections. So I got to drive down to Raleigh.
No problem. Yeah. Listen, thank you for showing up here for the interview. Patrick and Mary were on the chat line. I will tell Patrick O'Neill, Mary Ryder, that you said hello.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, if you guys are still on. And Patrick, I know we are way overdue to get together. So if you're still on, Patrick, we got to figure something out. But yeah, I love you guys both. There's such, Patrick's really important to me, I should say.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Known Patrick since 2000. So, and we know through David McReynolds. So anyway, listen, good luck on your campaign. Good luck in getting the Green Party back on the ballot. And thank you for showing up.
Yeah, thank you, Willie. And if people want to support us, we need your help. We're in this David versus Goliath battle. It's MatthewHoh4Senate.org. Please donate. Please encourage other people to donate because we are up against Leviathan here. But Willie, thanks for this. Thanks for what you do. Thank you for your support. If you're ever over, I'm in Wake Forest. If you're ever over this way in the Triangle, please let me know. I'd love to get together with you.
Absolutely. I'll put down all the information here when I edit everything.
Awesome.
Okay. Take care. Bye-bye.
All right. Thanks, Willie. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, everyone, we have a chat line here, and I'm going to sign off myself in a few moments. So let me scroll back up to this top, and we will talk to you all. And then I'm going to sign off myself in a few moments. So Daryl Hilton says, and Daryl Hilton is going to be our guest next week, by the way, everyone. So I just want to let y'all know they're throwing your connection for airing the truth. Yeah, maybe. Actually, I've been having internet problems. I actually tried to make a video other morning, and twice, and I couldn't do it. So I'm hoping that I'm going to do that tomorrow. So let's see. Mary Ryder, Patrick, Mary, how are you doing today? Great discussion with Matt and Willie. Yep. Let's see. It was the biggest upwards transfer of money to billionaires while giving us crumbs, and the squad voted for it. Totally agree. It was a letdown. I guess those crumbs are better than nothing, but they could have done more. Let's see. It was the biggest. That is the same thing. I understand why it was typed twice. Russia isn't an imperialist power. It's rather a dumb American take. I didn't say that it was in this case. I just basically said, and this is Shady Hasa. I basically said that basically the defense contractors are the ones benefiting from this, and the United States and NATO broke their promise to Russia after the demise of the Soviet Union. Let's see. Artie Reves, says, great interview. Listening. Sorry, I can't chat. Radical Leftist Agenda. Hello, how are you doing today? Let's see. If voters look at all the parties' platforms and voted their conscience, the political landscapes will look very different. Tell me about it. Very, very true. So, okay, if you all like what you heard, press like, and if you yeah, please go ahead and press like and comment. If you disagree, comment anyway. We will have a conversation. Feel free to share the content on this channel. As a First Amendment absolutist, it's my duty to inform you to create your own platform and utilize it, because we are the muckrakers of our time. Also, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. And remember, Matthew Hoh for U.S. Senate. I will put down the information later on today, this afternoon. And so all that should be up by this evening when people look back and check the information later on. And until next time, just remember to reject corporate media, because they got nothing to offer us. And I'm going to sign off right now because I'm very tired. Take care.